my morning of this decision had come months before.
The only thing I have to look forward to is paintball on Sunday. Like, if I don't go to the field, then I don't know what's going to happen.
It's been very uncomfortable, to be honest. It hasn't been like, okay, but like I had that breath of fresh air, and then it's just been like all good. Like it's been really, really challenging.
Photographer of the year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, where today, man, I am joined by just an absolute persona and someone who's been in the sport for so long and has such an incredible story that I think people know like the surface level of it. But Paddy Gleason, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, aloha, Hana. How we doing?
Doing great. Man, it's been such a fun journey being on this podcast so far, just bringing people on and like I said, hearing their stories and just hearing the vulnerability that people have, like we're literally getting messages weekly of how this podcast is saving people's lives or someone has decided to, not do something or do something in the right direction. And so I'm really excited to have you on and dive into your story a little bit deeper. But before we do that, though, as you know, you come from the scene, like we got to knock out our show sponsors, right?
Hey, give them a shout out. They're all good ones too.
Yeah. So first and foremost, Hormesis, my gosh, like I could just end the sentence there and end the podcast there. They are just such incredible people. Alex and Oliver are absolutely crushing it with all the drops they've been doing. The one that I rock almost every week is like this one that came out a few years ago, the Crux on it, and they're redoing some of the old school bands now. So like they're already reinventing their old bands, which is crazy. So it's an honor to be on the show with them. And then I just picked up ProDNA a few weeks ago with ZP and Travis and all those guys. And first time trying it today, they've got coffee. Does anyone know they have coffee? It's called the Skeleton Brew.
Nice.
It's amazing. So like if you haven't had their coffee yet, I don't know where they're roasting it, how they're doing it, but like the flavor is unreal. And then last but not least, my family, Junior and Gina Brown over at BFP Gear, they are just crushing the scene right now, both from a retail space, like they've got their retail store in Sacramento, the retail stores, and then they also have a huge online presence where, they're sponsoring the two best teams in the world, Dynasty and Fit. So absolutely crazy. But with that out of the way, man, let's jump into talking about you. So I think in the recent years, you've been known by, I think, everybody for the pro scene, lastly playing with NYX. And then you made the decision to step away, from the pro scene. What went into that decision? Because like, I can only imagine how hard that was.
Yeah, man. Shout out to the boys of NYX.
Hey, super quick before we dive into this podcast, there's been something on my mind lately. Did you know that nearly 50% of you still are not subscribed to this podcast? If you've been enjoying any of the shows that you've seen so far, the free and simple way to show your support is by simply hitting that subscribe button. And then my commitment to you is to continue bringing on guests each and every week, diving into the stories that are untold, the vulnerabilities, and really getting a look into some of the icons of our sport. Thank you so much. Back to the show.
Always played across the field with them, so it was really fun to be a part of that crew. Such a riot of a crew, and all good guys. But ultimately made the decision to take a step away for this season, and then hopefully, the goal is to go back if I'm privileged enough to get invited on with another squad or not. And yeah, man, it was it was not an easy decision, that's for sure. I definitely went through, I actually went to the first 3 events at the beginning of the season. I was actually planning on taking last season off. And then it was literally the week before Vegas, the practice weekend before Vegas. Coach Dan and Thomas and Bo all hit me up, and they're like, hey, we need an extra guy. Like, can you come and fly in? So I didn't even practice the layout or anything. I flew in, and guest spot with them. They, unfortunately, they were dealing with a bunch of injuries and stuff like that. So I kind of was just stepping on in. And then they kind of, they needed me for the next one. And then, so I went to 3 events. And then ultimately, things just started to build up on me. And it was a really tough time, to be honest. And I missed the last 2 events of the year. So, my morning of this decision had come months before. You know what I mean? I was already kind of in a slump, trying to figure shit out. And when the season was finally done, it was almost like a breath of fresh air. Because one, like, if I'm going to commit to something, like, I want to follow through on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, my commitment, and especially to teams, it's a big one. You know what I mean? And the last thing I wanted to do was kind of tarnish the relationship that I had with people because I wasn't fulfilling what I had originally agreed. So that really weighed heavy on my mind. And then so after Cup happened, like, it was almost kind of a breath of fresh air. I was just like, okay, like, whew. Now I'm like, that requirement was done. And then I was already like, I was going to take the year off. You know what I mean? So I kind of like made it in the clear. And, but that whole, 6 months before, 4 to 6 months before it was like actually like official, it was tough, dude. It was tough. I was dealing with all kinds of emotions and dealing with just my relationships back home, and it got to a really dark place. Let's just say that. So, we could dive into it more, but yeah, it was definitely a dark time for me that was not enjoyable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I appreciate you opening up about that, because I don't think you're alone in that. The pro scene's one thing, but I think all the way down to the divisions, paintball at its core is supposed to be something fun and fulfilling and an outlet. And to hear that you were going through almost the exact opposite, where, like, I'm imagining it was creating some type of anxiety or even like depression. It's just, I'm glad you were able to like have that thought of like, man, I need to step away from this for however long. Talk to me about like what that was like leading up to that decision, because it sounds like you had already made that decision without even telling anybody. Is that right?
Well, I think there's a duality to it. You know what I mean? I think part of me, I had the intent to go to each event. It wasn't that I was checked out for those last 2 events. Like, I had the intent of going to these events, and it was just like, as it got closer to those practice weekends, just kind of like my behind the scenes, like, there was demands as me as a father, there was demands of me as a husband, as a trainer at the gym that I'm working at. There was just a lot of demands pulling me in so many different ways. You know what I mean? And that was really tough. I just felt like I was like I just said, like, getting pulled in all opposite directions. And when being a paintball player is such a big part of my identity, I was like kind of going through an identity like crisis. You know what I mean? And I really do chalk that up to like postpartum for men. You know what I mean? And I don't really think a lot of people talk about that enough, and how that is a reality. I think when you speak of postpartum, even for women, it gets, you might get a couple eye rolls, or you might get like, it's a generational thing too. Like, I know my mom would just be like, hey, back then we just sucked it up. You know what I mean? But like, then you talk about postpartum for men, and that's literally off the radar. You know what I mean? Like, no one's even talking about that. So like, that really started for me when I was on the Ironman, and just the troubling year that I had with the Ironman, which was ultimately why I was going to take last year off. You know what I mean? But I think my ego got the best of me when I got the call and was like, hey, do you want to come and play with NYX? Like, of course, I was like, hell yeah. Like, I'm, like, why not? Like, I think that the paintball side, we wear different hats, and like that paintball hat of me was game. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, I'm going to make this work. And I was lying to myself. You know what I mean? I think, like I said, the ego was just in my way. And so I ended up making a commitment that ultimately I couldn't fulfill. And that ate at me even more. You know what I mean? And so going back, it was like, going to those last two events, like I said, I had every intention to be as best of a teammate as I could for these guys. And the reality was that I was struggling inside, and I couldn't be the best for these guys. And it was just a really hard decision to just miss those last two events, which were separate events. It wasn't like even after the going into the fourth event was like, okay, I'm going to take these two events off. It was like, I was expecting to go to that one. I said no. And then I even flew out for the World Cup practice. So I was expecting to do that. And I literally pulled the plug the Tuesday I was supposed to fly out to Florida for Cup itself. So, I mean, and you know, I think you get like the whole reputation and stuff like that. And you're worried about what people think and this and that. And I know, you know, opinions were being thrown around, and it was just like, you know, at that point, I was just like, I was at my wit's end, basically, not with myself, basically. I just like, I can't do this anymore. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of where I made that decision. And then it was just, that's where I kind of got that breath of fresh air when I finally like allowed myself to kind of mourn like what was happening. And then it was just kind of like, okay, I'm taking a break. I got to focus on myself. I got to get my mental health back. And all of those things that kind of come up with this, what like originally what I was saying is this kind of experience of postpartum, as being a new father. And as I dove into it, I was like, man, this doesn't, like, I wasn't expecting this, right? Like, no one has not that I've found, that has like a to-do book on how to navigate through that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so it was just very raw and intense. You know, it was very raw and intense, like going through this. And I feel like I'm still having a little bit of it, but I'm getting back. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm getting back to it.
Man, thank you so much for opening up about that. I think what you're explaining, going through, you know, the male version of postpartum, it's kind of like vulnerability in a way, where like the past few years, like we're starting to see like the rise of, you know, guys being vulnerable, or like just people being vulnerable, and how it's becoming normalized and being okay. It sounds like from what I know of the male postpartum, like it's at the beginning of that journey, right? Like people are like, wait, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so to hear that you went through that and were able to identify that, one, like congratulations, that's huge right there. Because if you didn't, like, who knows the path that you would have kept going down just to try to bury that somehow, right? And I know exactly what you're talking about of dealing with that reputation. Because last year I had to take an event or two off, and the first thought was like, my brand's going to suffer. Like, I'm not going to be relevant. People aren't going to, I'm not going to have events or pictures from this event. Like, how is it going to hurt me in a way?
Mm-hmm.
And that created anxiety. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I know what you're talking about there too. And that's so hard to deal with.
And I didn't even bring that up, but yes, that was definitely at the forefront as well with OTL. You know what I mean? Like, I put so much value in that. My platform for OTL was me as a pro player, and not as just my knowledge and skill and craft of being a trainer. You know what I mean? And that was something that I really had to kind of unpack and come to terms with, because I just felt like, just what you said, like OTL is not going to be relevant. It's not going to be as successful. I'm like on this kind of upward trajectory, and this is just going to be a setback, you know? And it really just, you know, in that unpacking of it, I really just had to kind of like ask myself, like, what's my definition of success? You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, like, I think one of the things that I always lean back on is like, okay, let's focus on how far I've come rather than where I've got to go. You know what I mean? And I really had to take a pill in humility, you know what I mean? And just be humbled that, like, I've done so much with building it from the ground up, and that, you know, I should just be grateful for that, you know, and kind of sit on my hands for a little bit, because I do get really kind of eggy when I feel like I'm not always progressing, right? And that kind of comes with this kind of male, like culturally being a male in today's society. It's just like this hyper, like, I wasn't not hyper masculinity, but like hyper hustle mode. You know what I mean? And like you get these reels of motivation and you get these things, you know, all these things just freaking shoved down your throat that like if you're not hustling, if you're not grinding, then you're not, you know, then you're not making progress and you're not going to be successful. And it's like you get all these things on the back of your mind and you're really missing kind of like the real essence of it, of the experience and the lessons that you're just learning along the way. So it's been a lot, man. Oh man, we can really just talk for a long time.
but like that's the gold, right? Like hearing you go through that, that it resonates so much with me, because a few weeks ago I had minor back surgery and I was out for, you know, a week and a half where like I literally couldn't bend over, I couldn't pick up anything. And I'm the typical type of person where like I try to do everything. You know, it's like I'll go get stuff off, you know, whatever it is, I'll do everything to try to not have my partner work as hard. So I try to take things off of her plate. And she is absolutely amazing. That week was so hard for me to like not be able to do anything. And I kept saying like, man, I just don't feel like, I didn't feel like a man. I like that masculinity was gone that week. And for her, she was so thankful to have the opportunity to be able to step in and help out. It's like that kind of reset a balance for me. Like, okay, like I've got to kind of have a better balance of this going through that journey. So I totally understand what you're going through and what you went through there. Talk to me about what it was like when you did step away. You know, you had that breath of fresh air. But I think a lot of people often struggle with an identity crisis, you know, because like you were saying, you know, the professional side was kind of a big part of your identity. How did you handle that?
Oh, I think it was a double-edged sword, because it was like, okay, but like I'm going to take a step away and now I don't have to kind of worry about these requirements of me as a pro athlete. But then you turn around and then you have all this kind of carnage that has happened because you've put it on the back burner, because you go and travel for 3 weekends before an event, and then, you know, you have to put things on pause and now you're going to have to address them. So it's I think all the way till now, which is already we're already in 6 months into the year. So it's flown by, and I've taken these 6 months already to really try and do some of that work. And a big part of it is I've been going to counseling and stuff like that, trying to digest everything that I've kind of shoved down. I'm really good at that. So I definitely have that as a toxic trait. And it's been very uncomfortable, to be honest. It hasn't been like, okay, but like I had that breath of fresh air and then it's just been like all good. Like it's been really really challenging examining some of these things of you that you know about but choose to ignore. You know what I mean? And so yeah, that's really kind of where I'm at sitting today. And it's an ongoing process, right? I think that I've gone through kind of 3 big evolutions in my life so far, you know, and I'm not, you know, I'm on the cusp of being 40. So it's just like, I feel like I've lived a few different lifetimes already. And I mean, the first one was obviously my recovery and getting clean. Like that's probably at the top of the list of life evolutions that I've been through. The second one was becoming a husband and cohabitating with someone and having that kind of bond and that commitment to somebody. And then the third one has been recently, which is probably number 2, is just becoming a father. You know what I mean? And so anytime you're in these kind of transitional periods where you are shedding your skin, right? And there's major leaps in self-development and identity formation and anything like that. I mean, there's going to be some rocky terrain, you know what I mean? And so that's where I've been at, to be honest, you know, is just just being that in that vehicle, trying to find my way, to be honest, and trying to find out who this old but new individual is.
That's so beautiful. And my wife and I have been having a lot of similar conversations around this topic recently. And she brought up something that just hit so deep. And she was like, it's the lies that we tell ourselves. And then when we do that, like we bury all of it, right? And then it takes so long to get that stuff to come up to the forefront. And when it does come up, like it's almost even harder and louder to get it out there. But it's cool to see where you're now taking that and you're going through that journey of, like you said, shedding layers. Because when you do that, there is a grieving process. Like you have to kind of grieve that was a huge part of your life. Some people look at that, hey, I can bury these emotions, I can bury these feelings. They look at it as a form of like protection, or like I'm a badass because I can do that. And so to like shed that part of you, you do have to kind of mourn that part of you to move on to the next part of it too.
And I think with the experience of doing it a few times too, like also knowing the understanding that when you're on the other side of it, like how much better you are off. You know what I mean? Like we want to procrastinate on things because innately we don't want to go through suffering.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On the base human level, like the human body does whatever it can to not suffer. You know what I mean? And so when you get to that other side, you have that chance to kind of have hindsight and be like, all right, I see what you did there. You know what I mean? Like I see why I did this. And like I am an individual that likes self-development. Like I don't like to be content. And so when it goes back to kind of that like, what does success mean to you? Like that in itself is a very high achievement to have rewarded to you, is these evolutions of you as a human, right? That's kind of for me what I feel like your lifespan should be, right? Is these constant like level ups. And when I was in recovery and kind of like really learning how to function as a member of society, it was the small things, right? It was, hey, I had $30 to put into my gas tank. Like, oh, cool. Like that's something to be proud of, like, okay, that's one little hurdle that I got over and I stayed clean. Like, I paid a bill. Like, oh, cool. Like that's another little hurdle. Oh, I got my first car. Like I'm the name on the car. Like that's another little hurdle. So it's all these little hurdles that end up being a bigger level up. You know what I mean? And so like that's what I try to kind of keep my, when I'm white knuckling things, it's like, okay, like, dude, something's not working. You know what I mean? And you need to start doing some of that nitty gritty kind of self work, and then identifying those little hurdles that you've maybe procrastinated on before or afraid. Maybe it was a rock that you were afraid of turning over. And, like I said, and then in hindsight, you're just like, all right, cool. Like that's why I did what I did. And that's why I put myself through that kind of uncomfortability. So I can be here now with that experience and those tools, so I can kind of now go on to the next chapters.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're describing, it's the power of reflection, right? Like you've got to be able to look back at where you've come from to understand where you are now and kind of look at where you want to go. And that's been such like a beautiful theme for these past few podcasts, these past few weeks. Is I've heard that from a lot of folks, is like, there's this huge journey, but if I can just break it down to like super small, tangible items, it really helps one, take the pressure, not the pressure off, but like it makes it more attainable. There was somebody who wrote, it's a really popular book. I think it's called Make Your Bed, or Let's Make Your Bed. And it's the principle of the book is every single morning, start off, the first thing that you do is make your bed, because that's one task that you accomplished. And then you can use that momentum into your next task. And like, it just kind of builds up, just like you said about, putting $30 in your gas tank and then paying off a bill. Like you're just building momentum for yourself. So it's amazing.
And like, yeah, just to spin like those words too. I've always told myself, in order to know where you're going, you have to understand your past. You know what I mean? And that really helps give clarity. So like when I'm in that situation to where I like didn't, I was going to take a step away for a year, it in like in overarching kind of bird's eye view, like, dude, taking a step away from paintball for a year is really not, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. You know what I mean? It really shouldn't. And I make it harder, and I make myself feel more things than I need to actually feel. It's like, you're so drama, you know what I mean? Like, it's so much drama. And I got thrown off track with where I was going with that.
Talk about the pressure of like stepping away, and almost like the pressure you're putting on yourself of what it'll mean if you step away. Talk about the building upon like making your bed every morning and building upon tasks to have small wins throughout the day.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And then no, but it was a fleeting thought. It was a fleeting thought. So
it's okay. It's gone. If it comes back,
I completely lost track there where I was going with that. So it must have not been that important.
No worries. Hey, let's if I would love to go a little bit deeper, into your journey, because I think there's going to be so many people that are going to listen to this who are either going through recovery, or they're thinking about it, but they're scared to go through it. And there's even going to be someone who is going through postpartum, but they don't even know about it. So tell me what that journey has been like for you going through your recovery. And before we do that, I do want to say congratulations, because I think, isn't it 14 years for you?
Yeah, man. Wow. Yes, I'm going to be, I'm going to hit 14 years. Yes. Wow. In November. So
that's amazing.
That's, when you talk about different lifetimes and different lives that you've lived, this has definitely been like, it's a trip to think that it's 14 years ago. Cause I do try and keep that in my back pocket and try to go back and revert to kind of like how it was within that first year, because that really keeps me going. You know what I mean? Cause I think you can also forget how shitty it was.
Totally. Yeah, totally. So you forget where you come from.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your journey. And for everyone listening, please go down. I don't ask this a lot, like go down to the comments and like leave Paddy a congratulations, because that is such a huge accomplishment. So I'm proud of you for doing that. But yeah, tell us about what that journey's been like for you.
It's been a lot of hard work. And I've received many blessings because I have decided to do the hard work and to stay on that track. When it comes to individuals that are looking to get clean, or who are kind of going in and out of recovery, like, my heart goes out to you. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is possible. So I always try and get them to just ask them if they're, if they're hopeful. You know what I mean? I think you got to have hope in order to have a little spark to even change that trajectory of your life. Because and I've seen it, like once you don't have any hope, or you're hopeless, things can go down fast, and we're not immune. Like, no one's immune to addiction. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, societal accolades or anything like that. Like, it is a cunning disease that will take anybody out, and I've seen it. And so my experience with it's been all the things. To be honest, it's been all the things. I've had really tough times. I've had really joyous and loving times, and I've learned a lot about myself, which, while I was out there, which, it's so odd that I started using it at like maybe 11 or 12, and then I got clean at 25, which on record is really early for somebody to get clean. But at the time that I got clean, which was only 25, which is still really young, I had spent more than half my life using. You know what I mean? Like, so
especially at that age too.
yeah. So when I got out of the fog, when you talk about identity crises, like I had no idea who I was, like how to function. Like I was always used to living on the fringe and all the things that come with that, right? The manipulation, the breaking laws, and that just becomes normal. The extreme behaviors, like things that normal people are like, holy shit, like these guys are fucking loose cannons. Like that's the normal for me. So it was like at 25, they always say like you kind of learn how to live when you first started using, you know what I mean? Or you go back, you revert back to the brain that you had when you first started using, right? So I think as you get older too, and the more that you prolong this recovery, like the harder it does get, because I was 25 and kind of taking that theory, then I was reverting back to when I was like 11 or 12. You know what I mean? And
Wow.
that's really tough because that's where your brain kind of stopped. You know what I mean? Like in theory. So, but like, and I spent some time as a substance abuse counselor. So, you see the guys coming in that are going into 40s, going into 50s, and how difficult it is for them to kind of stick with their recovery, because there's such a huge gap from the date that they may have started and like all the damage that's done all the way up until then. So it is really hard the longer you go. But paintball has always been kind of a main thread. When I was out there, I still had the same dream, right? I was still chasing being pro. And so I was knocking on the door, and long story short, I was at the tryouts for Naughty Dogs back in the day, and I went to one tryout, and then the next one I didn't go, and I didn't pick up a gun after that, and that was maybe like in 2008. It's a little fuzzy, but it was probably back in 2008ish. And then I didn't pick up a gun until 2012. And when I got back, and that was when I got clean at the end of 2011, and then so when I picked up paintball again in 2012, it was that kind of lifeline again. You know what I mean? It gave me that hope that I'm talking about. Like it gave me something to look forward to, and to distract me from all the hard work that was going on behind the scenes, and fell back in love with it. So like, you had asked me about that kind of quote or that caption before. It does have some personal meaning to me. And so I was falling back in love with paintball again. And then my, one of my best friends, Corey, kind of found out that I was getting clean. And so, we started to connect, and then fast forward to 2018, and that's when I got on Thunder. And then so it's just been like the rewards that I've gotten as clean has been tenfold. So it's like the thing that scares me to death is relapse, and knowing and understanding like how much work it's taken me to get here. Like the thought of losing all of that and then doubling that with the thought of having to do it again scares the living shit out of me. So that scares me enough to not even like want to do it. You know what I mean? Like it's not worth it. And so, yeah. And then like that was the hardest thing that I to date that I've done in my life. You know what I mean? So like the confidence that it gives you to do other things is like, all right, cool. Like I can do this because like I've been through fucking the trenches. You know what I mean? Like I can do this until, like I said, going through this like postpartum and stuff has been really challenging too, and kind of has shaken me to my core again, and to the point where I was pretty shaky. You know what I mean? Like I haven't really been that raw since I got clean. You know what I mean? So it brought back a bunch of feelings and emotions and just, I mean, again, it's kind of scared me. You know what I mean?
Sure. It probably brings you right back to that state that your mind was in going through that. And, I think that's where a lot of the voices come in of like, it creeps in of like, hey, this will be easier if you did this, or if you took this, you can get through it a lot easier, like that quick fix.
Yeah. I mean, I would lie if I said that I don't, even with 14 years that those thoughts aren't in my head all the time.
Yeah.
I think there's a misconception about that. It's like, now that I'm clean, it's like I don't think about fucking using. Like, weed was illegal when I got clean. You know what I mean? It's legal now, and there's fucking stores that sell it. You know what I mean? Like, I could easily be like, okay, like I want to go to the store and do that. Or, I mean, alcohol's always been in the store. I could go and do that, and you know, I know where to go and get it. And so it would be a lie if I didn't say, like, man, after a hard day, fuck, it would be kind of nice to have a beer. It would be nice to kind of have a bong rip. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally.
Even after all these years, but it's the compulsion that is relieved, right? It's the feeling that I need it. And so I'm able to have some buffer in between both of that to be like, okay, and I've told this to many early people in recovery. It's like, play the tape out, right? Like, I've never had a beer. Like, I've never just had a beer. I've never just had a toke, right? It's fucking all or nothing. Like, and that's the honest truth. Like, and if it's, you know, and then if I'm not clean, then I'm going to take it even further. You know what I mean? Like,
where else does it go?
Yeah. Like, especially with alcohol, right? Like, if it always starts with alcohol. I'm going to have alcohol. Okay. Then I'm going to have Coke, and then I'm going to have pills. And then it's a cascade effect. And that's just is what it is. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
And, like, if you relapse, lying to yourself, right? Talking about that, you lie to yourself. And it's for the ones that kind of go back and forth. It's like, dude, you know, I've seen friends with 10 years clean that convince themselves that they can do, like, alcohol, right? They can go and drink some alcohol. Okay, well, how long does that last? You know what I mean? Like, okay, so you've managed it for what, a month, 2 months, 6 months, and eventually, and I'll put my bottom dollar on this. Eventually, it progresses to full swing. You know what I mean? And I currently have a close friend that is going through that right now. And that, you know, it breaks my heart. And you know, shout out to Jerry. And I don't want to see another friend, you know, go, and it fucking eats me up. You know what I mean? And this guy is this friend that I'm thinking of is going through it right now. And it's like, I really pray that he finds his way back. Because it's really hard to bury your friends.
It is, you know, it's that's probably one of the hardest things is, like, you can only do as much as what you can. At some point, that person has to have the drive to, like, want to change, right? Or to take that step.
Oh yeah. That's a lesson that I've learned along the way too. It's like, it's not being cold. It's just like, dude, it is a form of protection as well, like, for yourself, you know what I mean? And you can only do so much, you know? And if they're, you know, calling me up and asking for help and like, dude, I'll be there. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I'm not going to be the one checking in on you and doing more work than you are for yourself. Like that, I refuse to do. And that, you know, I think I also learned, like, earn that right as doing the work myself and being active in recovery. It's like, hey, you know, I'm not going to work harder for your recovery than you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally. And that kind of ties into, like, we'll jump into the fitness part of it here in just a minute. But before we do that, it sounds like you've always thrived when you've had a purpose, right? Like, when you found paintball, that was almost like hey, I have something that's going to drive me to do this. And so it's almost putting you back on a path. And I hear that from a lot of people that are struggling is the only thing I have to look forward to is paintball on Sunday. Like, if I don't go to the field, then I don't know what's going to happen. And it sounds like paintball for a long time helped you through a lot of those tough times to steer clear of some of what you were doing. Is that accurate at all?
It is and it isn't, right? I think there was the time that paintball steered me towards the wrong path. You know what I mean? And that was, you know, that is before recovery.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I would say that paintball was a vessel that kind of kept me looking forward to the weekends, making sure that I stay clean until then. But it was also my friends. You know what I mean? I think being at paintball brought me with my friends.
Yeah.
And addiction is a disease of dereliction. You know what I mean? Like, it isolates us from the people that love us. You know what I mean? And so how do you combat that? You combat that by immersing yourself in social events where people are staying clean. So there's also a caveat there, right? So thankfully I have paintball friends, especially on Maui, that understood my situation, but they weren't also, you know, they weren't addicts either. You know what I mean? So there was a healthy group of people that I was being around that can, you know, because that can also easily be switched, right? I mean, if your paintball friends are people who are also using and you're trying to stay clean, you're rolling the dice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just
we
bad
always say
influence.
that you know, you hang out in the barber shop, you're gonna get your hair cut.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
so
sure.
you really have to be mindful of who you're surrounding yourself with at early stages of recovery, because you have to protect that, like it's life or death. And you really do. It is it's a life or death situation. And so just as, you know, just as hard as you go with using and playing paintball, and whatever you choose to exert energy into, you need to do that same thing with your recovery. You know what I mean? And it has to be very protected and almost kind of sacred, because no one's going to do it besides you. It's, you know, addiction is a very selfish disease, but recovery is a very selfish process as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, because that can go either way, right? Like if you want it, but then you're not 100% on that, like the people that surround you, that they become your influence. They're the ones that are kind of they're navigating what your decisions are going to be, because you're not so true on it. And I could imagine a lot of people going through that first journey. It's probably really scary to think of the relationships they may lose for doing that, because maybe people don't support it. Did you go through that at all? Like going through?
1000%.
Yeah.
1000%. I got clean on Maui. I did a lot of my using while I was up in Oregon and on the mainland in general.
Yeah.
And by mainland, I mean just the states of the U.S. Up here. And but when I got clean, I was back on Maui. And so being back on Maui, I have all my friends, right? All my high school buddies, all my lifetime friends, and they were individuals that I partied with. Out, you know, those were those kinds of friends, and I still love them to this day, and I still talk to them. At that time of my recovery, though, I had to distance myself.
Yeah.
You know, and I was at such a rock bottom though that I didn't care. I understand where people feel like, oh, I'm gonna lose these. You know, they might feel some type of way about it. You know, but I was at such a rock bottom that I was really willing to do anything. Like I needed to get clean. Like my life, I was going to end up dead. So I was like, okay, I had an awakening. I was like, okay, I got to get clean. Like, and went to the rooms and, you know, one of the things I learned was about that. Right. And that is one of those hurdles that everybody jumps over. Everybody has to jump over that. And it's like, okay, you know, who is healthy for me and who is going to put my recovery at jeopardy? And I don't care if that's blood. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, like if your mom or your dad is toxic for you and it triggers you to use, the recovery side of me is good, dude, cut them out. You know what I mean? And it's really harsh to say, but and some people are gonna probably push back on that and be like, yeah, well, family's family. I don't know, man. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather you sit there clean and living another day than having, you know, getting buried. And so, like I said, these are life or death decisions that don't they're not to be taken lightly. So it's like, you really, like I said, you really have to protect yourselves over that and make these hard decisions. And like we were talking about earlier, but when you make these hard decisions and you make it out on the other side, then you can like look back and be like, all right, cool. Like, that's why I did that, you know? And then you can you know, then you can go back and reevaluate letting people back in your lives, you know? And that, you know, I did that. Like, once I got enough time under my belt, which is about 5 years, it was about 5 years. It wasn't like 1 year and I was, you know, in the clear. I waited the long game out. You know what I mean? I was like, I got to make sure I'm really good. And so it was about 5 years that I started, and I didn't even have toxic relationships with these people, but I was like, all right, I can go and like hang out with you guys, and you guys are at the bar, like doing your thing, and I'm going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, so it was like that. I disappeared for a good bout of time to make sure that I was secure within myself to do some of these things.
Yeah, good for you, because I think a lot of people would either get sucked back into that or be afraid to even navigate that situation. And I hear that a lot, especially at paintball events where they have that center 50 court that sells alcohol all weekend. I've heard it from people that are like, yeah, I can't even walk near it because like just being around it sometimes is the thought of it. So it's cool to hear that you knew what your time frame was and you had those conversations with yourself to really ultimately be okay with putting yourself back in that environment because you've gone through that journey.
And I just go back to I always in anything that I do, I like to think that I'm a savage with it. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna go hard in the paint, and I just adopted that early with my recovery. I was like, okay, this is where kind of like where I'm putting all of my cards. This is where I'm putting all of my energy into, and I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna go in. So that's really the mindset I feel like people need to adopt when it comes to recovery. You can do it for everything else, right? Like people want to be savage with this and this and this and this, but then they struggle with this. It's like, dude, you have all the tools that you need. You just need to divert that energy over to that, and you will be successful.
Yeah. Tell me, that's one thing. Like when you're talking about your recovery journey, I want to transition and talk about Off the Leash and you're working out. You kept saying like it has to be you. Like you have to be the one that does that. And when I think of working out or going to the gym, like I could have a coach, I could have a friend or a program, but like ultimately I'm the one that is going to decide to wake up that day and go to the gym or sleep in. Like talk to me about that process for you, because I know fitness obviously is huge for you because you built a program around it, you built a crazy successful business and businesses around it. What has fitness meant for you?
Fitness, it's just a fabric of my life now. You know what I mean? I don't think that I'm a crazy health nut or like overstimulated by fitness. You know what I mean? It just becomes part of you. And that was because I started working fitness into my program when I was less than 30 days clean. You know what I mean? Like, and so like that has just run parallel with my recovery. And so it's just who I am. And, but the things that like kind of how like things that we learned from paintball and how that kind of has transference over to things that we've learned just in our daily lives and vice versa. Like fitness has done the same thing from being disciplined, from having structured programs to seeing results, like, and earning those results because you were consistent. Like those things all I learned from staying dedicated to working out, and also it's not just working out, right? It's living that lifestyle. So when I was getting clean, I was eating healthy, right? I'm feeding my brain nutritious food, and how much faster that kind of got me out of that state of anhedonia. Like, so for the ones that don't know, like there's a state called anhedonia after you're done kind of get using and on the road to recovery, and it's about 12 months where because you've used substances for so long, your level of pleasure is skyrocketed over what a normal person's level of pleasure is. And so that's why there's so much kind of like in the early stages of recovery, and hopefully someone does latch on to this because it is pretty important. But like when you're in those early stages of recovery and like happiness doesn't feel like you're as happy, all of the good feelings don't feel as good because your level was so high. You spiked that up with dopamine for so long that your threshold is way higher than anybody of normal capacity. So it takes about a year for that to balance itself out before you start feeling those feelings again at a normal level. And so I think with fitness, I think it just accelerated that though, right? Like because you're feeding yourself healthier foods, you're working out, your sleep cycle sucks when you're trying to get into out of in the early stages of recovery. I remember that too. Sleep cycle just sucks. And so it it kind of just balanced the scales a little bit more. So that's really what fitness has done for me. And then, you know, jumping into paintball and everything, and I'm sure we'll dive into that too. It also just went hand in hand, and kind of that was like the early sparks. Like back in 2012, I had already kind of, you know, been working out and this and that. I was very novice though, right? But
Sure.
going into paintball, it just kind of fueled the fire. I was like, okay, like I just love moving the body. Like I love being active. I love sports. I always have. And I wasn't doing so when I was out in the streets. Like, dude, when I got clean, I was 140 pounds soaking wet, like just skin and bones, dude.
I
was
heard you say that on
sunken.
Marky's podcast.
Yeah, I
was like,
was a skeleton, dude. I was the stereotypical kind of junkie that you see. Their skin was fucking green, their eyes were sunken in, you could see my bones. Like I still remember, and I keep this to, you know, in my back pocket. It's like I remember rolling over like the first or second night of me trying to stay clean, and I rolled over, and like I could feel my hip bone. Like I just felt like I could feel my rib cage against the springs. Like I just felt like a skeleton, you know what I mean? And I was like, all right, I'm so tired of this. Like I'm going to get healthy. And that's just a memory that I have back, you know, when I was getting clean, that still sticks with me because, you know, and talk about body dysmorphia. And anytime I feel like I'm getting too skinny nowadays, I'm like, red flag, get me a fucking
Something's
burger.
off.
Like I can't do this. Like I gotta pack on some pounds.
Yeah.
But going into Off the Leash, and like like I said, that was like kind of the early spark of going, and even though I had Off the Leash or OTL was not even on my radar at that time, obviously, but starting to do some of this more kind of, I think it was also an outlet. I mean, I don't think it's also been an outlet for me to be creative.
Yeah,
I think
I can kind of see that.
Even at my early days, I was doing cool shit on my Instagram of paintball drills and stuff like that I was making up. You know what I mean? And tying in the fitness. So I always kind of did that without actually having a name to it. It was just a natural progression for me to roll that into what I'm doing now. So it's kind of fun to like think about that from like that's almost 10 years ago that I was doing that. What is it? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was over 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago that I was kind of doing that. So, and it's been really cool because I've had people that have been following me since then. And so like now we chop it up and they're like, dude, it's fucking crazy. Kind of like what you've done in this space that you have, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it is actually really fun. So
man, it's gotta be so cool, like watching somebody, because like you now get to have both sides of it, like not just watching somebody in their fitness journey, but watching somebody on their paintball journey as well, like grow on both of those avenues. That's got to be unreal for you to see that.
It's unreal. Yeah, I think that's basically sums it up in a nutshell, dude. It's fucking unreal, blessed. Like I truly, like, for the most part, love what I do, you know. Really design, you know, I always, Archie was always one say like life by design, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, dude, bet, like I'm gonna create this life that I want to, you know, we only get once, so it's like I'm gonna create this life that I want to live, you know what I mean? I really don't have time to do things that I don't want to do. So if I find myself, and we do, right, we find ourselves in things that we don't want to do from time to time,
Sure. Natural.
and it's like, okay, well, do something about it. You know what I mean? Like, be creative, figure out a way to do something that you want to do. Because like I said, we only have one crack at this.
Yeah, it's similar to you with your story. Like for me with the podcast, if you told me 3 years ago I have a podcast, I'd be like, you're freaking crazy. There's no way. You know, but then like things start to happen naturally, and like you, that the business just takes off, and you're like, holy cow, like it just becomes part of who you are, and like you learn so much about yourself through that. And there's just such a power of impacting other people through your own gifts, right? And your own things that you've gone through. You know, I was at my local field here in Austin, and one of the guys there, Benjamin Schroeder, I told him,
shout out to Benji. Yes, I already knew. Yeah, man, Benji.
I was like, hey,
I love that guy.
I'm gonna have Paddy on, and he was like, his eyes went big, and like he was like, man, he's got such a story, and you know, he went through something similar to you, and like, I could feel how passionate he was about you and that connection with you, and I don't know. I'm sure you've probably seen it, but like everything he does with like his breakfast club, he's
Dude,
posting little.
shout out to the Breakfast Club. I fucking love what he's doing, and just the creation that he's doing. Sorry, but yes, I do. I love what he's doing.
Yeah, so like he's pulling so much inspiration from you, of the creation, the working out, paintball, marrying all of that together. And so it's so cool to see what you're doing and how it's impacting people all over the world. Talk to me about how you took that, because I think weren't your classes virtual at first, and then you got into the gym side and like now have the programs there too. Is that right?
I've always done both.
Both. Okay.
I do both. I mean, so I'll talk about the different hats, right? Fucking
Yeah.
too many hats. I love hats. I have too many of them, and I'm a collector, so I'm always adding. But so I have the in-person training. Like I'm a trainer at the gym, and so that, not to get completely off sidetrack. So at the beginning of this year, when I joined NYX, on top of everything else, that was something else going on in the background. So we opened up a new gym, and I was kind of the face and the spearhead with that. And so we were opening up a new gym, and all the responsibilities that comes with creating the culture, creating members, creating content. Like that was
So
all
much work.
that was, it was a lot of work. So I am doing that, and spent some time doing the strength and conditioning for the Major League Rugby team up here. Like I've done.
Wow.
That's one hat that I wear. OTL is my online training that I do that's specifically for paintball athletes. So that's the duality with that. So I work with pro athletes and everyone down to general population in person, and then I specifically keep OTL to paintball performance.
Oh, that's amazing. It's cool to see that too, because I think a lot of people, when they think like, man, how can I get better at paintball? They're searching, and there's just not a lot out there. But like you are creating literally a roadmap for somebody to progress their career and fitness.
I mean, we try. I think everybody's different. I think that that has to come with experience and with hopefully wisdom as a coach, that everybody's different. I don't think there's one blueprint, just like, hey, and you got to be careful if someone is promoting to you like, hey, here's the blueprint how to do something. Not one blueprint fits all. You know what I mean? So as a coach, you have to have that vigilance of taking each individual and meeting them where they're at. And to shout out to Benji. And Benji came to me while he was going back and forth, you know what I mean, with his troubles. And so it was a privilege to I wouldn't even say work with him, just to enter into his life at that chapter, and to be that lighthouse of like, hey, like this is kind of what I would do, and let me walk side by side with you as you learn how to navigate and create, again, life by design. What do you want? You know what I mean? Like, what's your vision? Like, okay, cool. Well, let's figure that out together. It's not like, hey, I've got something for you, let me give it to you, and you just do what I say. It's no. Like, let's do this together. And I might not have all the answers. I'm just a fucking schmuck. You know what I mean? Like, but I can figure it out. Two minds are better than one. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's figure this out. So, yes, but and working with I've worked with a lot of people from the pro division, worked with a lot of people all the way down to the divisions. And, it's really fun to see the growth of OTL and, the performance aspect. Sure. Obviously that's what I'm into is the sports performance aspect, which no one really does. So I kind of have like free reign in that wheelhouse. And, but I love to also see just how it impacts outside of paintball. Right. Yeah. And it's talking about like the pinch me, or, look at what it has come. It's definitely a community. You know what I mean? Like, it's definitely evolved to where it's a lifestyle, it's community, it's what people have invested themselves into and identify with, which has been fucking cool. You know what I mean? Like you said, like, you see OTL pop up, all at all the events and stuff like that. And all these, you know, and all these individuals really take that kind of lifestyle to heart, and kind of live with that in the back of their head. You know what I mean? When making decisions and trying to steer their lives into better directions. And, you know, I've been doing it long enough to where I've seen people, you know, go back and forth and but come back, you know, and they're just like, okay, like this time's different. And I've seen them be successful, and it's, you know, it's been really cool. Yeah, for sure. You know, it's been really, blessed, man. You know what I mean? Blessed.
Yeah, totally. There's something so powerful about one, just impacting somebody, but when you create a culture or a brand or a community, and that becomes what is like the driving source for somebody, like that is just gold. And so for you to be able to do that for people all over the world is just, it's incredible. So like, I hope you take a moment and reflect and be like, you're saving people. It's an unreal thing you're doing.
Well, like we're talking about, man, I'm in the business of changing lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. What's been the most rewarding part about doing it? Is it the paintball side? Is it the fitness side? Like what keeps you motivated now to keep going?
Man, I mean, I think there's a lot. I cannot, you know, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that add value to my life. OTL adds value to my own life. You know, one, I think just I'm a creative person, you know what I mean? And so just having that outlet for creativity, right? Having a platform and having that as an outlet to me, expressing myself. That's a huge thing, right? Therapeutic, some would say, you know what I mean? And
totally.
I have talked about like I come from a family of my mom's an artist, and I come from my cousins are all music, like some of them, not all of them. Some of them are musicians. So we come from an artistic family. But like writing programs to me is definitely like a form of art, right? Like being able to kind of see this is just through a lens, right? But seeing a paintball match performed is almost like seeing a dance, right? Okay, well, let me program something that's going to enhance that performance. You know what I mean? So that's like kind of how I get to be creative in that sense. Then I have my clothing, right? And I've always wanted to do clothing, and the streetwear has always been kind of part of my lifestyle as well. So designing all of that is definitely more direct kind of creativity. But then the human connection part of it, right? I mean, I think we've been talking about it this whole time, right?
Yeah.
Human connection, you know, that's huge for me, especially just to kind of revert coming from addiction, which is just dereliction, being immersed with people and like dude, I have a couple, but I don't have very many people on the list that I like dislike. You know what I mean? Like that list is maybe one or two people in my life. You know what I mean? They're not in my life for a reason, but I like everybody. You know what I mean? Wherever you're coming from, we've all like, I'm no one to judge on anybody. So it's like, no matter where they're coming in from in their lives, into my life and stuff like that, to me, it's always about human connection and the experiences that we can share. So OTL is just another platform for me to do that. Right. I mean, we've talked about being at events and people coming up and be like, hey, I heard you on this podcast and this really resonates with me. Like, dude, like that type of exchange is what we are searching for in life. You know what I mean? And you never know what you say and how that's going to just push someone off onto another trajectory and ultimately maybe save them lives or, you know, whatever it is, you know, it just the value of that is what OTL does for me as well. Provides for my family. Fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
when you know what I mean? Like, so when I, in 2018, when we moved up here, we had just gotten married a couple of weeks before we moved up here. And then that first event in Vegas was my first pro event. I literally got married probably like 2 weeks before that. And I was a substance abuse counselor back on Maui. And then my wife worked for human services as well. But we had both quit our jobs and completely relocated, starting from scratch. You know what I mean? Wow. Using the money that we got from our wedding as our fucking foundation. You know what I mean? Like, wow. And so got an apartment, got this and that, was working for a flower shop and like we were just making ends meet. And so like when you were talking about masculinity and stuff like that, like how deflating it was for me to be a newlywed and just feeling like I was not doing my job as a husband. You know what I mean? Like that was really fucking with me. But that's another story. But being kind of backed into a corner, anytime you do that, right? Anytime that you back yourself into a corner, purposefully or not, there's levels of pressure, right? And so it forces you to be creative. And that's where the inception of OTL was made. It's like, okay, first year pro, I'm really not making ends meet. So either I quit playing paintball and try and figure out a 9-to-5 that I can work and support for my family, or I play paintball and figure out a way that I can create something that's going to funnel money to help me support this.
To drive it.
And honestly, that's where OTL came from. It was just like,
wow.
I need something that is like within the paintball realm and the paintball community that I can help provide for my family. Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, and that's, you know, OTL does that for me today. Right. And so there's many different ways that you can paint it, but OTL is my project, my baby, my everything. Right. I mean, I think that also speaks with the things that I do through OTL, because it's literally an appenditure of me. Like it's literally just like, wow. OTL is me, and me, I'm OTL. You know what I mean? Like that's just, it is what it is.
It's one in one. Yeah. Wow. That's such a big theme I've heard from the last 3 or 4 guests is you said it, John Rose said it, Meter said it, and now Ryan Moorhead. They wanted to figure out a way. And so they went all in on, you know, paintball or their business, or tying those two together. And there's just some type of, I can't describe it, but like when you go all in, like it does something to your mind where like you're betting on yourself, really, essentially. And it sounds like
it forces creativity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it does. It forces creativity, and it takes you out of complacency.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think we get so used to being comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to the point where people are deathly afraid of not being comfortable. You know what I mean? So they'll keep doing the same shit over and over and over, even though they fucking hate it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the thought of doing something new is even scarier than doing something that you hate. You know what I mean? So going all in and just jumping into the abyss, right, is what I say. And I've done that a few times now. You know what I mean? And have that experience. So if I feel like if you could get really good at doing something, it would be getting good at just jumping in to things without worrying about the consequences, worrying about whether or not you're going to be okay. Because guess what? You're going to be okay. Yeah. But having the experience of doing that and the doors that opens it's just wild.
You're going to learn so much about yourself too.
So much. Such
a cool journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, Paddy, if you haven't thought about this yet, like you totally need to write a book and call it Off the Leash, like just like a memoir of your life. It would do so well.
You talk about, Jonah was talking about imposter syndrome. And I was like, dude, I have been told that, you know, like you should fucking write a book. Dude, I barely fucking type the right words when I'm texting. You know what I mean? Like
you could use voice to text now. You could have AI do it for you in 10 seconds.
You should see how many fucking red underscores I have while I'm texting. You know what I mean? Auto corrects. It's like, I don't know, man. Like I wouldn't even know where to start.
I think it would be helpful for a lot of people, more than what you're already doing. I think it'd be pretty cool to hear your story in written form. So, well, Paddy, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for coming on and opening up about you and your journey. You and I were talking in the green room off air, and somebody's going to hear this podcast, and you're literally going to save someone's life from, they're going to be either going through recovery and they're close to making a wrong decision, or they're going to start their recovery and they need that little extra oomph to get there. And so hearing you opening up about yours on a really deep level, you're literally going to save someone's life just from having this conversation.
Like, I mean, and behind the scenes, we kept talking, you know, we were talking, I was, I always just try and stay in the frame of mind of being a lighthouse. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you have to shine light on these things. And I always just say the darkness dies in the light of exposure. You know what I mean? And the more that we get out here and talk about it, and that's why, you said that you kick yourself for having a podcast. And it's like, okay, well, I really actually don't believe that. Anybody can have a podcast, but I love that you have the podcast that you have. You know what I mean? Like, this is what the paintball world needs. And the guests that are coming on are really cool, like sharing some of these quote unquote vulnerable things. I also just call it life. You know what I mean?
It's all it is.
And having this platform for people to resonate. And I'm always I learned this from the rooms, right? This is why I stuck around the rooms, is because I love hearing stories, because you hear stories and then you realize the lie that you told yourself, that you're alone in this. It gives you something to relate to, right? So I love storytelling. I love hearing stories because it makes me feel a part of something. And I'm also able to pull my, creativity from people. And so it's like, I hope so. Yeah. Being a lighthouse, I hope someone hears this. I hope you're not shy to reach out via social media or whatever it is. And even if it's not to me, right? Reach out to somebody, pick up the phone. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the number one killers, is that we don't pick up the phone enough, and then we live in this isolation, this bubble of isolation, and feel like that we are the only ones. Go talk to somebody. I guarantee that they have similar experiences. We all are more connected than we think, So I do hope that this was of value to somebody out there. Even if it is just one, right? We always say that even if it's just one, then everything has been worth it.
Exactly.
And so hit me up. I'm active. I'm active on social media. So
you respond to my stuff so quick.
Of course. Of course.
So, man, thank you so much. We've always ended the show with a really cool tradition by connecting the guest each and every week. And
I've been nervous, dude. I've been nervous about this.
I know this is the one that always catches people. Because like the cool thing of what I do is sometimes I'll record a few episodes a week. Like I have an NXL weekend. This is coming out right after NXL, so I need to kind of batch record a little bit. And so sometimes the guest can't see what the question is. But I had Ryan Moorhead on last week, and he had a really great question. Well, actually, he had like a 2 or 3 part question, so he's giving you some work.
A loaded question, perfect. Of course.
So his questions for you are: what do you want to get from the sport? What do you want the sport to give you? And then lastly, when you do finally leave the sport altogether, what do you hope to have left the sport?
So the first one was, what do I want to get from the sport?
Yep.
And what do I want to get from the sport? What was the next one?
Yeah. What do you want to get from the sport's the first one. What do you want the sport to give you? So that's kind of the same thing. You can kind of put those together. Like essentially, how do you want paintball to impact you is probably how I would take that. Or like, what do you want to take away from paintball? It's such a simple question, but it's so deep when you really think about it.
Because you could go in many different ways, right?
Yeah. And especially
there could be many different answers to this. And I'm coming at it from me as a little kid playing paintball. Okay. That's the context. So the context of me being young, playing paintball, coming from Maui, right? Watching a lot, watching all the paintball videos, because that was the only window that we had into paintball.
Yeah, no social media.
It wasn't we got to go to the field and see Dynasty practicing or Ironman practicing. It was we got when the videos were out, then we got to watch the latest video. And so I think if I'm in that mindset, I really just want to be remembered as one of the greats, right? One of the impressionable people within paintball culture. I don't even need to be one of the greats. I just want to be remembered within the paintball culture.
Yeah.
You know. And then what was the other half?
The other half was, the last of it was, what do you want to have left the sports? Like, what do you want to give to paintball when you leave it?
Oh, well, that's fitting. I mean, I think with what I'm saying is
You
the
kind of answered
duality
it
there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really what like gave me the confidence and kind of kept me pushing with OTL, right? It was like, okay, well, guess what? I'm like, obviously winning a pro tournament has been on my to-do list, right? Like on my bucket list. But okay, maybe that's not going to happen, right? But I can also leave this dent into paintball with like my stamp on it as being an individual who stepped into this world and really changed, or at least really shaped or influenced paintball performance. You know what I mean? Like really brought some valuable tools to the table that people use in order to get better, and maybe they go off and win a championship. Shout out to Cyrus, my guy.
Cyrus.
So yeah,
program,
you know what I mean? Like that's really, I feel like what my calling is. It may not be that I'm going to go and win a tournament, which I have come to terms with, but I can be that person that people use as a tool to get better and to go and do it themselves.
Yeah. Gosh, that's beautiful. Sometimes there's almost, you get more joy of seeing people that you've helped get to that highest level.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's a lot less selfless, right?
Yeah, totally.
Winning a tournament is for me very self-fulfilling.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like that would be a bucket list for me. Again, if it doesn't happen, then I'm content with that. But doing the latter of it is a lot more selfless, which is one of the tools that you learn to do in order to stay clean, right? We keep what we have by giving it away. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So that, that's, I've gotten really good at that. And it's just like, here, have the fucking knowledge that I know and go do it yourself and find the joy and that you're seeking,
Yeah. Man, that's a beautiful answer. You crushed it there.
Yeah, we try.
Now the pressure's
Ryan.
off.
Next one, Ryan.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, line them up. Let's go. The pressure's off you now. You get to ask a question to next week's guest without knowing who it is.
Oh, I already got one locked and loaded.
Let's go. Rip it.
So my question would be, what is the hardest question that you've ever been asked?
Ooh. That's a question that like could go in so many different directions.
Yeah, dude. It would be very interesting to see what how deep somebody can go with that one.
Yeah. God, I love that. Man, this has been so good. This is probably one of my favorite episodes I think I've done so far, just with how
you're just being nice.
went.
You say that to everybody.
I mean, I love each and every guest, and like, the cool thing about this is like, as soon as we're done, I'm going to go upstairs, and my wife always is like, "Hey, how was it?" And I just feel so much energy of like, "Oh, we talk about this, and this." But
Yeah,
like,
totally.
It's really therapeutic for me because like, as you're talking about your story, I am thinking about like interpersonal stuff of like, man, like how can I take that? How can I use that? And I get so much pleasure is not the word out of it. Like I get so much reflection out of it, I think, having people on the podcast. So it's been super therapeutic, and having somebody like you open up and talk about your journey, it's fuel for me to like keep working hard and like keep going further into my passions.
Right. I mean, you're talking about like filling your cup. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like you doing this is something that is a tool now that you have in your life that fills your cup. You know
Totally.
what I mean? That continues for you to have that reflection, to have that self-growth, and keeps you going. You know what I mean?
Spot on.
And I know that we're kind of getting to the tail end of it. And I feel like that's kind of like where last year left me, was that it was no longer filling my cup.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that because I love paintball and I love playing on the pro platform, but I just feel like at that station in my life, it was not doing that. You know what I mean? And although I've been so cutthroat with things in my life, it's like, okay, well, this thing no longer serves a purpose for me. I'm going to kind of remove it from my life.
Yeah.
And paintball was that. And I think it was like really hard for me to kind of like see the clarity in that, right? It was like, not to say that I completely removed it, because I'm not, right? It was just that stage in my life, what I was doing, it was not working. So
yeah,
you know,
you're taking that ball of energy and you're repurposing it somewhere else.
Yeah,
that's all you're doing.
Yeah,
So,
and to be better, so that when I come back around, I'm not living that same. I'm not in the same place. You know what I mean? That's ultimately what you're trying to do, right? I'm just trying to relocate.
Yeah, exactly. What a great way to end the show. It's exactly how we started it, talking about where you left off. So cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and for everyone that's tuning in, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you, brother.
Of course.